Good evening. Hello, 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 and welcome to another edition of the Beauty in Us Radio right here on Awesome God Radio. I'm your host, Nelson E. Brown, and I want to thank you all for tuning in to another show this evening. It's been a busy weekend for a lot of people. It was Father's Day weekend, but we also celebrated Juneteenth. So we had a holiday and we had a special day with us this past weekend. So I wanted to dedicate the show to dads. So this is my very first time having a post Father's Day special on right here on the show, and I was supposed to be having a few guests this evening, but some plans have changed. I have one guest with me right now, Mr. Dave Briglio. You guys may have remembered him as being the girl dad, the engineer um, who was very active and passionate about sports. He's with us this evening to talk about his experience as a dad and his journey as a dad and what it means to him. And we have two other gentlemen, Mr. Keith Tooley and Mr. Gene Laguerre, who are supposed to be joining us too, but they're running a little behind schedule. So we're just going to roll with the punches, so to speak. So we'll just see what happens. But in the meantime, I'm going to just really just share with you all that it's been a really really great weekend for me. Again, we celebrated Juneteenth, but we also celebrated Father's Day weekend. So when we have this conversation, we can look at this conversation from different angles. We I think it's safe to understand. It's safe to say, and it should be easily understood that again, a dad does not have to be a birth father. It could be a mentor. It could be a coach. It could be an uncle, a grandfather, a godfather, and that could come in so many different forms. But we'll have an opportunity to learn about that more when we speak to Mr. Dave Briglio and some of our other guests this evening when we talk about Father's Day. Even though again it's already passed, um, I think that it's important for us to have that discussion. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you guys to Mr. Dave Briglio. Mr. Dave, thanks again for agreeing to appear on my show for the second time. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that you appeared on my show around this time last summer, coincidentally.
Yes.
Um, and when you talked about your passion for sports, your work as an engineer, and your life as a dad, as a girl dad. So thanks again for agreeing to appear for the second time on my show. Could you tell the listeners, the new listeners, since then, a little bit about yourself and what you do before we hop into the conversation about Father's Day and what that really means?
What I do for a living is I'm a civil engineer. So I do designs and studies to build things. I've just changed jobs, and what's really fun about this is my new employer, there is a lot of architects. So I used to do a lot of things that were anything but related to the building. And here with architects now, it's a very different type of work. And the real kicker, as you mentioned, I just love being with sports and coaching and things like that. I get to work on parks and athletic fields now. So it's I'll just say if you really do follow your passions, you'll be surprised how it shakes out eventually. That it'll just get as good as you thought or better. Stick with the work you love. And you said I'm a girl dad, four-time girl dad. My girls are now, oh boy, between they're 17, 18, 21, and 24. So that's me. That's what I do. And by the way, happy Juneteenth. Our company yesterday announced that starting next week it's going to be an official paid holiday for our company.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks again. We have Mr. Keith Tooley on for us, to talk about his experience as a dad. And again, Mr. Keith, thanks again for. I know you're a little behind, but I just wanted to give you a chance to share your story.
Hey guys, how are you?
Oh, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Hi Dave, nice to see you in person. So you wanted to talk a little bit about what it's like being a dad. That is it's such a weird question because you're when you're uh, when you're a kid, you have this idea of what a dad is, right? It's like they know everything. They're they have all the money in the world, by the way. They have all the friends that you want to have and all the answers to all your questions. And then you get there, and it's really just trying to make the best of it. And I think the most important part of the whole thing is just trying to help your kids through it, help your kids become adults, right? That's what it feels like as a dad. I mean, there's all kinds of, there's all kinds of hugs and loves and kisses and stuff like that in there too. But like every time you got to discipline your kid or whatever, it's like, you're trying to build like real human beings, like that's what it's like being a dad. So, I mean, I don't know if that answers the question a little bit, but.
Well, you know what? You just mentioned the guy, that's the guy Paulie and my dad would tell me, probably later in high school, even college, he would tell me all the mistakes he made. He would tell me about things he was trying to fix around the house, and things just got worse. And he was a pretty handy guy, but he was telling about things that were early on, and I didn't think anything of them at the time. But it's interesting that he left those little breadcrumbs for me. And maybe that's, I guess, if my kids get old, that's part of it too. You kind of let them know you're going to screw up and it's going to be all right, as a parent. And maybe that's part of it too, because I didn't realize he was doing that for me for 10 or 15 years.
Well, I think that's great. Again, we're starting off in the right conversation. I'm glad that you guys, again, you guys met a few months ago when we had that chat about this show and this broadcast, and I'm glad that you guys answered a couple of the questions. So since we did a good job, creating a segue into this discussion, I know that, and again, I've been very open about it. I didn't have my dad wasn't as active and present as I wanted him to be in my life growing up, but I have been able to see a few examples of that recently. So what has been the most? I mean, I know you guys talked about it a little bit, but let's dig a little deeper and just think about like what are some of the joys and what are some of the difficulties? What have some of the difficulties been on this journey? Because I've learned from others that, again, it goes in cycles and through different stages, and there are hard times and there are good times. So it can definitely be a journey, but it's fulfilling in the long run, especially because you guys are where you are now. So could you tell us a little bit about that and what that looks like? Anybody can start.
I'll go. You know, the best part is the hardest part, and that's the part of getting involved as a dad. There's a line that when is it becoming about you? Especially your kids' successes. You want to push them along to that, but at some point you wonder, well, is this about me or them? And then there's the point where, okay, you want to give them space. They got to figure it out. But when is it that there's that other line I'm backing up against? The one where I probably need to, step up and say something, get a little more involved when it's a little uncomfortable. Because you're right, it is. There's the good and there's the bad. And even the bad is pretty good. But I think that's one of the hardest things. And I do want to come back to what you said earlier, Nelson. You don't have to have a kid to be a dad figure. You don't. You just gotta be that person that's there. So I'll kick it over to Keith. But that's kind of what I really thought is when do you just need to back off, Dad, and Dad, when do you need to step up and get involved in something, pay a little more attention.
Yeah, I'll echo that. That's very true. I think there's also probably the hardest part for me has been, or not just for me, because it's about, in my situation, my wife is there too. So, I'm not a single parent at all. So, getting on board together sometimes is a challenge, because we both come from different backgrounds. I mean, similar but different. And her dad was more of a like a physical guy. My dad was not at all. And it was, and it's funny because um, when you have to do discipline. Okay, discipline is one thing, but the harder part is actually letting them make mistakes, right? Watching them make mistakes, like because you know what happens. Like it's like you're watching them you go to touch the stove and you slap their hand away, and then they're like slowly moving their hand towards the stove again, and you slap the hand away twice, and then the third time you like let it go a little too far just for a second so that they feel it, and then they're like and this is I'm not condoning like letting your kids burn their hands, but my point is I'm talking about like situational things. You see them doing it and it's like that, but the you see them about to go through the pain, and you're like, I've been there, but they got to do it. They got to go through it themselves. Heartbreak is an example. What else? Failing their first test or whatever. I mean, we tried. We try, even to the point like when they're little, right? And you're playing games with them, and you kind of want to let them win, but there comes a point like if you don't win once in a while and you don't let them feel that, like, and they'll cry, they're going to be like, oh, you keep winning. I'm not getting, I'm not doing well, they have to learn that that's okay. Like, hey, I'm going to win some, you're going to win some. I'm going to be happy for you when you win. You can be happy for me when I win. Like, that's the lesson. Right. But they're going to cry about it, and, so it's just hard to watch.
Well, and also, Keith, you and I grew up in an era that's not like it is now. I mean, you go back 30, 40 years, there was a lot more. It's still around, but there was a lot more of the dad sometimes trying to keep their position as the big dog. And it was a lot more of the school of hard knocks. And now we know a lot more as parents, but you're right, there's a point where, well, hold on. You can't make this kid unable to live their life. So that's, and no, I don't think Keith, you're condoning kids bringing it, but that was literally in our day, that was a real thing. Someone would say, let them touch it, like the grill in the backyard of the cookout, getting too close to it. And at some point, they'd say, no, kids got to learn sooner or later. And everybody would just watch kids put their hand on the grill. And we don't have that, but that is the hardest part now. You're right, Keith, is at what point are we not helping to experience what only they can experience and have to grow from?
Yeah, and not everybody got a trophy back then, like you came in second, you were first loser. Like that's just the way it was, and it's not a I don't think we should condemn that necessarily, because you have to learn what it is to win, and you have to learn what it is to lose and move on. Like that is the most important lesson probably in life, is to learn to fail and then keep pushing forward. Like that is one of the biggest things you can teach your kids. And my son's about to go off to college, and people are asking me, hey, are you sad that he's going to be gone, and the whole all the emotions with that? And I'm like, well, no, not really. I mean, I'm sad I won't be able to see him every day, but with all the technology we have, it's probably not even that big a deal. But the most important thing that I feel is pride, that I know he's prepared, and I'm proud of him for making it this far, and I know he's going to go ahead and do great things, you know. And so when people say, you know, are you scared? Are you, you know, not really, not really. You know, I know he can handle it.
Well, and this is when you do think back to yourself and you remember when you're that age. It's not that you forgot about your parents, but you were ready to do something completely separate. You know, you just weren't. And how mad would you be if your parents swooped back in and said, nope, you can't do that. I'm going to do all these things. I mean, I think about those things too. I was never trying to get away from my parents, but the freedom was just amazing. And and they gave that to me. You know, although I do recall getting a phone call back when we had landlines after my 8th day of college, and my dad saying, "So, are you alive?" Because I just lost track. I was having so much fun in this new world. I lost track and didn't call home for 7 or 8 days, and I can't believe they waited that long to to call the dorm room. But you know that must have been killing them. But I think back, and it was I really appreciated that. You know that they waited that long to harass me about not checking in.
I mean, even now, you know, 18 is the legal age, right? And my to be an adult, and my son is still asking me, hey, can I do this? Can I do that? And I'm like, you're 18, brother. Like, you know, he's like, I have this assignment. I don't think I can go to church today. You know, I have to get it done. I'm just like, that's between you and God, man. Like you 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 make the decisions that you have to make. You know, like this is where it begins. This is where you learn what's important or what's not important to you. You know, and maybe, you know, church and God are not that important in your life right now because you haven't felt much pain, and you haven't had many experiences. You know, but I had to learn the hard way too. I wasn't always, you know, I didn't always feel like God was first in my life. I didn't always feel that way. I knew he was always there, but I didn't always feel that he was first. And now it's like, yeah, he's got to be first or else things don't work. So for me, it took a while, and he has to go through the same pain. He's got to learn the same stuff. And he will, and I'll teach him all the stuff that I can. But again, this is another, you know, painful lesson. Like, you have to make decisions now, for better or for worse.
Yeah, and it's going to be okay. And when I say okay, it doesn't mean perfect. It's going to, you know, and sometimes my wife, you know, and she's right. I tend to sometimes just underplay things. It's like, well, what do you mean okay? I'm like, when I mean okay is you're going to get through it. It may stink really a lot for a long time, but it will be okay. And I guess that's just the way my dad phrased it a lot. And yeah, he was a general guy, but he was also Marine. And you know, I didn't find out till years later as an adult, you know, what was underneath all of that. And maybe that's where he had that strength. You know, just he knew what he went through and leaving home to do those things. And I never was in the service or anything like that. But he let me go do what I had to do and was always at the other end of the phone. You know, I think that was probably one of the most important things is without him calling me, if I called him, he picked up.
And that's one thing that I think people in general have to figure out. This is why mentors are important in their lives. You know, there's someone to be able to tell them that there is another side. Like you're in the middle of the pain now, but there is something on the other side, whether you know it or not, whether you believe it or not. Right now, there is hope. You know, and I think Steve Harvey said it best, right? He says when you're right in the middle of the pain, you're in hell. He goes, why do you want to stay in hell? Just keep going. You'll get to the other side, you know. And sometimes it's tougher to conceive that when you're in it. But you know, that's where mentors come in, and I think, you know, that's probably a pretty good reason to, you know, hard part about being a dad too. But again, this is all like you said, you don't have to be the person's biological dad to impart some of this, fatherly advice. You can do this for other kids. I mean, my nephews and, other people being in Young Men Strong and stuff like that. Like this is how you spread that to the rest of the world. And unfortunately, my wife has a higher level of anxiety than I do, right? A lot higher. And it came from her father being such an imposing character in her life, and her mother being quite docile. And so everything he said went, and everything, like she didn't feel like, even though she had a job, she contributed, she watched the kids, like that was her main job. Like when he came home, it was like, oh, dad's home, be careful, walk on eggshells. And it's a now it's different. He's got grandkids and he's just a lovable mush. But back then, he was taking cues from his parents and how they grew up, and it was different era. And I think it bred that anxiety in her. And but now, having the balance between me and her, there's a little bit of worry that every father or every parent has, that things won't go perfectly, and that something might happen to your kids and whatever. But again, just letting them go a little at a time. That's the key.
Yeah, and you talked about mentoring. I heard someone talk about how definitely for those who aren't dads, the role they have is so important because a mentor gets to say things a parent might not be able to, and sometimes shouldn't. Because there is a different relationship, and it's an amazing service. And none of us know how many mentors are out there helping our kids because they don't know they're being mentored. Whether it's a teacher, a coach, just someone they run into that says these words. Um, I remember asking my dad how he decided to get into his livelihood. Just like, how did you want to learn to go to a technical school, run a printing press, and later he started his own little print shop. And some guy when he walked down the street to the bus stop, I said, you know who he was? No, he was a guy in the neighborhood. We just walked to the same bus stop, and he just asked me some questions because he knew of our family, and just threw out there, oh, well, maybe you want to go check out one of those technical high schools. You can figure out, they'll teach you, help you find something you learn to like doing. He didn't tell me that for 50 years. I mean, really. And that was how there was a mentor. He doesn't even know the guy's name. Never did. And he had that type of influence that, you know, it's like when you're coaching your kid. If you really have great advice for him, you got to go find somebody else to tell him the advice. Because they'll reject it almost on the spot. And yeah, the mentors. And I'm going to thank all of you. I don't know who, my kids have been around so many coaches and teachers, 4 of them. I mean, over all these years now, I got a lot of people to thank that I've never met. I'm certain of it for what they've done to add balance. You talk about the balance between the dad and the mom. There's all those people outside the house that provide that invisible balance for us parents when we're back home too.
Nelson, how we doing?
Yes, I'm just enjoying the dialogue here. I'm just enjoying the dialogue here. I was letting you guys talk, because I was going to talk about this from a different angle. My dad, as you both know, he passed away last year on January 23rd, and of course, I didn't get the same experience at all, that you guys have with your dads at all, because my dad wasn't present, and he wasn't as active as I wanted him to be. And in the very beginning, I want to be honest, and like when I first turned 18, and when I first started this like young adulting life, in terms of me, establishing independence and growing into my own person and just trying to navigate through all of the obstacles, I was very, very very apprehensive about, even having children, or even, being open to marriage, because I felt like that's something that I didn't deserve, because I didn't have a dad to really model that for me to the best of his abilities. So I said, okay, in the very beginning, I was like, okay, I can just focus on my career, and just I can just focus on building my career, and just enjoying being around children. I've always loved children, but the idea of having my own in the very beginning was something that was there because I felt like I didn't really have a good model of that. So I felt like, okay, if that wasn't modeled to me, why put myself in that situation where I don't really know how to be a dad or how to be a parent? And also, in terms of being married, that's something that I was not really open to, because I felt like, again, again, people. I mean, again, I that's something that I was fearful of, because my dad didn't really model that to me. So I felt like in the very beginning, I'm just going to focus on my career and focus on what I want in my life. I've always enjoyed children. I've been around children. I've mentored children. I enjoy children, being around children, teaching children. I've always enjoyed that. But again, in terms of growing my own family and trying to really establish that, that's something that I was really apprehensive about earlier on in my early adulthood, because I felt like, again, you know, if it wasn't given to me, why should I give it to someone else? Why should I give someone else that opportunity? So in the very beginning, I was like, okay, that doesn't matter. I can just build my career. I can still make connections, and um, I can still build relationships that I have, even though that um, even though I may not have that, that doesn't make me any less of a person or inadequate in any way. So that's how I felt in the very beginning. But now I'm open to, and shared this with tons of people who are in my corner and who support me, like growing my family through adoption, is the route that I'm deciding to take, because I see that, since my dad wasn't there, and since he wasn't there to the best of his abilities, and he didn't give me all of himself, in terms of who he was and the foundation that he was supposed to establish for me, something that I was supposed to build upon. Since that wasn't given to me, I feel like, okay, now it's my opportunity to give it to someone else. Now it's my opportunity to give that to another little boy and another little girl. So that's the angle I'm coming through. I'm coming from, because, like I said, I shared with you guys that I've decided to further my education by pursuing my master's, and I'm even considering going all the way up to the PhD level. So I see where my life is going, and I really don't want to cheat myself out of the opportunity of having that experience, because I see the joys in that, because I have other people in my in my group, in my support group. I have other peers and classmates who are older, in the master's program and at my school, and also, you know, people that I've met, people I've been able to network with. I see the joy in being parents and being in healthy relationships, and now I realize that that's not something that I really want to cheat myself out of because of my own insecurities. So that's the angle I'm coming from, because I still want to, again, leave some type of foundation. I think it's very important for dads to leave some type of foundation, and I felt like my dad didn't do that to the best of his abilities, because he was not able to uh, grow past his pain. So because of his past, so that's the angle I'm coming from. That's my outlook on it, because I feel like I have been able to accomplish a lot, and I have been able to build a foundation, and there's still much more in store, because I still have many opportunities that are coming my way and that I'm taking advantage of. And in terms of building those connections, I think I've done a much better job at being more open. I still have a lot to learn and ways to go, because I feel like my biggest flaw is just allowing myself to be loved by others. So that's something that I'm working on now, not just in my therapy sessions, but also with the relationships that I've established now. So that's something that I know of, that I know is a big flaw of mine, because of my past relationship with him and uh, other people who I looked at as, role models or father figures who may have let me down or turned their backs. So that's the angle I'm coming from, and I do appreciate you guys with your dialogue here.
And may I say one thing here? I mean, I think all your listeners, and I know both of us, are really proud of you and what you've done in your life, despite the idea that there wasn't that mentor per se as a father figure in your life. But everyone is an example, and whether they're a good or bad example is the key, right? Everyone is an example some way or another. And what you're doing is you're learning from a bad example and turning yourself into a good example. And, people live either too much in the past or too much in the future. People who do that, are reliving the glory days or just being super anxious about what's coming up in the future. And you're just either way, you're not living in the present. And what you're doing is you're changing all of that. You're taking the past and learning from it. You're taking the future and setting goals, and you're living right there in the present, and you're doing what you're supposed to do. Like there's you mentioned the word adulting. And that wasn't a word way back when. Now kids are learning how to iron and learning how to cook an egg and stuff like that. These are things that when I was 10 or earlier that we were learning how to do. You have to iron your shirt, go over there and iron your shirt. You have to cook, you feel hungry, go ahead and cook yourself an egg or something, make a pancake, something, And I did the same thing with my kids. And, now when my 10-year-old says, I don't want whatever mom cooked, we don't have to force them to go, well, you eat it or or you get nothing, right? We don't have to do that. We just go, well, then make yourself something to eat. And he does. And, so he's not going to go into the world and live in the past or live in the future. He's going to do it right there in the present, and he's going to take care of himself. And he's just, 10, he's 12 now, and I know in 6 years he's going to leave for college as well, or whatever. And I'm going to be just as proud of him moving on as well, because I know that living in the present, that this is the right time, that will be the right time for him to do that. So, these are concepts that are universal. And if you're a good example, is what I'm saying, of what these concepts are, and you're doing a great job. I think your fan base would agree.
Yes, thanks again. And like I said, and I do realize now I have a much more mature perspective on this type of conversation. And I realized, that I don't want to stay stuck. I don't want to, again, cheat myself out of the opportunity to be a dad because of something that I had absolutely no control of in the past, in terms of what my dad done, or because of the mistakes other people who were supposed to be in my corner have done. I've learned not to define my future by other people's mistakes, and I've learned that, okay, there's a lesson in everything, like you just mentioned, and it's your responsibility to take that lesson and move forward. And that's what I'm choosing to do now. And like I said, me furthering my education and me, in all of my pursuits, I've realized that it's important for me to let go of all of those youthful insecurities and just focus on my goals, and focus on, again, the foundation. I feel like, again, the foundation is much more important than all of the mistakes that may have happened in the past, or all of the hurt, the heartbreak, the disappointment, and everything else. So that's what I'm focusing on now. And I had a conversation with my mom recently about all of this, and she's very happy that I've been able to move forward, because she was very concerned about me cheating myself out of the opportunity of being a dad and being happy, and again, opening myself up to new relationships and everything else, because of how because of my insecurities, or because of my fears. But I've had a conversation with her recently, and she's very, very happy that I've been able to get over that hurdle, because that's something that I've been insecure about for a very long time. And even with all of my pursuits, in terms of my professional life and me furthering my education and taking advantage of all of these opportunities, that was still an area that needed to be fixed. And that was still an insecurity that I had, that had me stuck in a very, very unhealthy space. So now I have a much better outlook on that. And I know I'm aware of what my flaws are and what I need to fix and what I need to improve. So that's what I'm very happy about. I think that's one thing I'm proud about the most, personally.
Well, and you should be. And I tell you what, my dad, for as great a job as being a parent as he was, he had his mother, took good care of him. But my grandfather died when my dad was 14 or 15, and my grandfather was my age, early 50s, when my dad was born. So my dad really didn't have an example, you know, of what a dad does in those high school and early adult years. Yes, the first part was, fun and games. But I got to remember, his dad was 60 years old when he was 8. Okay, he, my grandfather was not wrestling on the floor with them. I mean, I see pictures, they had fun, but not like, my dad was in his, early 30s. It was a very different experience, but it was just in there. It's if you want to do it, it comes out, and that's just the thing you got to know. And I'll add that the other thing my dad had told me, and it was more than about getting some big adult decisions. He would just say, "Man, if I knew what was coming, I'd have never done it." So it is the bliss of ignorance. That he did. He said, "You don't want to know all the answers, because it's just going to make you want to not do it." He's like, "Just go." That's what Keith was saying. You got to get out of hell. You gotta step forward. And you know, this is a broader message to so many people that are like you. I know this is one of the reasons you do it, Nelson, is for there are a lot of people like you. My dad didn't have the education you're getting. Not even close. You are so far ahead of him in those terms. You know, you're gonna do great. But it really comes down towards you're in this. You're in it. This is not a passing thing. So it's not what you learn so much. It's just that you're in it. So I keep saying you're in it now. You are present. Whether you're looking for your flaws or you're just looking for things to do well, it doesn't really matter. If you're in it, you're living life, and you can live that life then as a mentor, a dad, whatever it takes. And I'll tell you, I've got one of my best friends. They've adopted 2 kids, and I'll tell you what, his kids are Asian. He and his wife are white. When I look at their family, no, don't look anything alike. But when I look there, those are kids, those are parents, and that's a gift to me, honestly, when I get to hang out with them, because you really see, you take for granted, what genetics, does. That connection you think is there through the genetic bond. It's not. It's the bond of that love, that openness that you want to do, and nobody can stop you from doing it. That's the really cool thing. Nobody can get in your way from wanting to care for somebody like a parent.
And we keep dancing around this idea that that there is no perfect, right? And you can be perfectly imperfect. It's okay, And I read a book called Life is Messy by a guy named Matthew Kelly, and in the beginning of the book, he talks about a sort of art/recycling thing that they do in Japan. And if you break a vase here, you'll throw it out, right? But when you break a vase there, what they do is they patch it back together. But they don't just patch it back together. As an art form, they patch it back together with glue or paste or whatever it is that you use to patch up vases. They put like a gold tint to it. They put like gold into it. So now you have a vase that accentuates the cracks, right? And this is how he mentions, and how I truly believe that when you do things that break you, when you do things that make you broken in some way, shape, or form, and you learn from it, you've now got these golden cracks all over you that make you you. You know, there is no you. There is no other you. You are an individual with certain experiences, with certain talents, with certain abilities, mindsets, intellect, looks, you know, everything that you know, the ability to love, you know, different abilities to love yourself. You know, these are all the things that make you you. And so, you know, that in and of itself is beautiful. You know, the fact that you're able to see yourself in a different way now than you might have years ago is like putting together that vase and going, okay, that's okay. And maybe even more beautiful than it was before. My 2 cents.
Well, yeah, it is. I mean, that's what we're all getting better as we go along. Even if we're getting grayer and a little more sore in the morning, you know, it's it's similar to what you were saying, Keith. I remember reading the book. It was, when you go through something bad, people say, "Well, I want to be the person I was when." You can't. That person's gone, and not in a bad way. You're now the person that went through the thing you just went through. That is, I mean, yes, much of you is there, but you are different, and that's a good thing. There is something to gain from that. Your successes, yes. I'm not the person from 5 minutes ago. I'm the person that did succeed. I'm not the person from 5 minutes ago. I'm the person that failed at this particular thing. And I keep moving forward. Well, guess what? Time's moving anyway. It's taking you forward whether you like it or not. It's whether or not you're going to stay connected to the fact that life is moving. It's never stopping. You don't get that choice. And that's clearly what you've been doing, Nelson, since we first talked. And you just keep doing more and more things, the book, the podcast, now the video, these specials that you're doing. You're not the person you were an hour ago, in what you've shared. You're just not. And that's an amazing thing. And I hope that everybody who's listening here, even if they're just thinking things to themselves, they're not either, because of what you triggered here in a good way for everybody who's listening.
I love that, because that's so true. And I know this is a talk about being a dad and that kind of thing, but not being the person you were 10 minutes ago, not being the person you were a year ago, not being the person you were 5 years ago, that all plays into the whole thing of being married, being in any kind of relationship at all, being a parent to your kid, because those kids are changing every day too, as you're changing. Your wife is changing every day as you're changing, and just because, you got together at one stage in your life doesn't mean that that's going to stay static the rest of your lives. It's not. And you have to, if you're willing to grow into that, then you have a chance at a long marriage. If you're not willing to change, you just, I gotta be me and forget everything else. I'm not saying change who you are per se, but there are some realities that happen, right? You can't keep going out at night and partying and coming home drunk and going, "Well, I'm a good dad." No, you're not. There's no way that that's possible, not in any way, shape, or form. So if and whatever that thing is that is keeping you from spending time with your kids, or spending time at home with your wife, or that kind of thing, you're creating an obstacle for yourself. And so there are changes that have to happen. And people will say, "Oh, used to be so cool," or used to be down to hang out and do whatever. You were all so spontaneous, and now you're just boring. Well, this is a different kind of adventure, right? And you just have, if you chose to do this, this is a different kind of adventure for you. And if you can get into that and you can feel good about that, then you'll be fine. But if you keep trying to live in the past, you're just going to hurt yourself. You're going to hurt the people around you. This is it's just one of those life lessons. Like, and people say, what's the, I think they asked Tom Hanks. He goes, what's the secret to your long marriage? Because he's been married to the same woman for years. And, as a celebrity, we see people come and go all the time, right? But he's been married for a long time. And he said, I think the real key is that you just have to genuinely like that person and want to be friends with that person. You have to be friends. And I'll say there's probably some other stuff, but my son looked at me when he was really young. He had to be like 8 years old. And my other son was only like 2 years old at the time. And we were going to a wedding, and they had these bubbles that you had to carry, and we were supposed to use them when we get to the pictures, right? So blow bubbles so that the wedding, you can see the bubbles in the pictures, right? And so my older one had one, and I had one in my pocket, and I had a spare one in my pocket just in case. And then my little one was like, "I want bubbles," right? So I'm like, "All right, you have the bubbles." So I give him the bubbles, and he walks, and not even 10 steps later, the bubbles are all on the floor, right? And I'm like, "Hey, what'd you do? Like, you were supposed to use those." And he looks at me and like little eyes, and he looks up at me and he's like, like just about to cry. And I just pull out another one. And I go, "I got another one. Don't worry." And I put it back in my pocket. I was like, "But I'm not going to give it to you now. I'll give it to you later." And my 8-year-old looks at me and goes, "Dad, you know what I love about you?" I'm like, "What's that?" And he goes, you don't worry about things that are unimportant." And I go, "You're 8? What are you talking about? What do you mean I don't worry about things that are unimportant? Like, how do you come to that decision at 8? But it was a really good moment where I just realized, like, all right, we're doing something right here, you know?
The fact you can put those words together, regardless of what he really knows, what you're thinking, and everything else, if he can say that, he can live that.
Well, I was, and that's a nice story. I'm glad you shared that. For the last portion of the show, I wanted to talk a little bit about what it means to have a foundation as a dad, and what it means to build a legacy. Because I think that leaving a legacy and creating a foundation for your son or daughter, I think that's very important, because they have to have something to build upon when you're not here anymore. So could you tell us a little bit about what it looks like to leave a legacy as a dad, and what it looks like to establish a foundation? Because a lot of people unfortunately believe that they can give their children the proper tools and resources without establishing any type of foundation, and I think that that's false. Because I think that your children need something to build upon in order to, again, have those tools and resources to be successful in different areas of their lives. And that foundation, it doesn't always have to be filled with all of the good stuff. it could also be filled with the not so good stuff. So what does that look like for you guys?
You want to go, Dave, or you want me to go first?
You give it a shot.
Okay. He's like, that's a hard question, man. All right, so I got a few thoughts. So the first thing about building a foundation, I think, is right. When I first went to the military, I first went to the Army, I thought I was going to fail. 100%, I thought I was going to fail. I had made the decision to go because I really had exhausted most options, right? And I had gone to college for 2 years, doing what I was quote unquote supposed to do, and I said, this is not working, and I don't like this, and I'm going to do something else. And so I started on this what I call a path of failing forward, right? So I decided that I was going to go to the military because I figured, like, the worst thing that could happen is, well, okay, you can die, but but without barring that, right, the worst thing that could happen was I get a bunch of skills that I can, in 4 years I can come back out. I wanted to be a doctor or a medic or something. I got my EMT certification in there, and I figured worst case scenario, I'll come out on the other side and get out, right, and go work at a hospital, be an EMT, a doctor, anything, right. But so the minimum I was going to do is get some skills, even if I failed, right? So, and if nothing else, I'd get some experience. Even if I failed out of basic training, like, I realized I can't do that, and then I'll have to figure out what I can do, So, but fast forward just a little bit, and I made it through basic training, and I made it through EMT school, and then I was like, well, what else can I do, right? So, one of the things that I joined the military for also was that they said I could apply to West Point. So I applied to West Point and I got in. And then I go, holy smokes, what else can I do? So then I go through West Point and I get to get out into the military, into the world. And I start doing the job. And I go, well, I want to be a company commander. And 6 years down the line, or 5 years actually, I become a company commander. I'm like, hey, what else can I do? So there's this thought process that I think I think is a foundational thought process, right? That you don't have to do everything right. You just have to pick something, take some action, and start doing it, right? And when and just as a foundation for that, for a child, I think that's something of a gift to give to them. I'm not saying that you're absolved of the rest of everything, right? I'm still trying to teach them right and wrong, like, things that I learned when I was a kid going to church or with my parents, like, this is right, this is wrong, like stuff like that. But and that also is foundational. But just the idea that there's you have to make your own way, right? You have to be able to think for yourself. You have to be able to choose something and realize that everything you do is a choice, right? If you're doing the wrong thing, there are indicators. It's called pain, right? And in the Army, they used to say pain is weakness leaving the body, right? and this is sort of like it's really a mentality where if you can do this and you can make a decision and you can honestly say that these things, like, own the things that you do, then you will not have regrets, which is something that at the end of your life, people go through, right? You got to think about this. Like, when you're, it's a terrible exercise, but it's a good exercise, right? When you're about to pass, you imagine you're about to pass away. What are your regrets? And, right at the end of life, this is what goes through people's minds. Like, I failed at this, I didn't do that. They don't go, most of the time, they're not like, oh, I did so great at everything. Like, that's not that's not what happens. Like you just go, oh, I wish I could have done just, like the guy at the end of Schindler's List, just one more. I could get just one more. And that's kind of like if you choose what you do, and and you can be happy with the things that you're doing, you bring some joy in your life, you raise good people, you surround yourself with good people, um, and you can really feel comfortable in your own shoes, in yourself, um, and maybe fulfill a purpose, pick a purpose and strive for that, even if you don't accomplish it. Getting to a goal is great, but striving for that goal is kind of what makes you happy, right? It gives you direction, gives you a destiny, like something that drives you, something that gets you up in the morning, like getting to that goal. So pick a big one, and try to strive for it. And you do that by failing forward. You can't be afraid of everything. You just got to try. And if there's nothing else that I can say that's foundational to a child's life, it's that mentality. So that's what I would do.
Yeah, and a lot of what you just said is, as my kids are getting to that point, where they're on their own. I've got one she's got her own career. I've got another one that another year she'll be through college. And the legacy, it's especially with young women, you want them almost to be even more strong, because it's silly. Like, you don't need to rely on me, yet you don't want to be alone. Okay, so it's a weird thing as a girl dad, when you're trying to have that strength. But the regrets that you mentioned, what I think, my dad passed away a couple years, and I know he didn't have a regret, including when, in a 48-hour period when he was ill, there were some things he said he would continue to do to be around longer for my mom. And he said, "Nope, coming home, you know, and we're done here." And happiest guy you ever saw, sitting in his bed, people stopping by for the last time. He made everybody happy because there were no regrets. It was the right thing. And here's what I'll say is, it wasn't even quitting. Like, early on, he actually said, "I'm not going to quit on you guys." But that was the wrong decision. Just like, okay, we got a guy who went to West Point. He didn't quit college. He stopped. It wasn't the right thing. And that's, I think, building off a lot of whether you're going to keep going hard or it's time to stop and change course is, don't be afraid to do things that someone else might call a failure, including I stopped doing that. Don't be afraid to try, and reach beyond your grasp, because you might fail at that. Just just live, and I've made a number of changes in the last 10 years. I've changed what I do. I'm still an engineer, but this different type of, I kept changing because, there's something's not right here. I'm not feeling the joy that I used to for the first 20 years. And it wasn't clear where I was going, I'll be quite honest, up until about 3 months ago. And now all of a sudden it just kind of laughed. I tell my kids, I go, I can't believe someone's asking me my opinions on lacrosse fields for design, that I'm getting paid for this. This is the stuff I used to do for fun, to create some enjoyable work on the side. And but if I wrote down all the stuff I did, oh, that was a horrible decision. Oh, that was a horrible decision. But I never felt that regret, and that was something, a legacy my dad kind of gave for me. It was part of that, and I think back, and he just kept saying, if I knew it was coming, I'd have never done any of this stuff. And it maybe that's the legacy. That we're talking is a continued one. It evolves. Um, you know, it's mine. It's my spin on it. I do things very different from my dad. I'm a much bigger risk taker. Yet at the same time, it still comes from that thing that it's your life. Go live it. And oh, my kids are gonna. They worry about things I don't think are worth worrying about. They ignore things I think that you really ought to have your eye on the ball for that. and I'm talking the adult ones. Um, but you know what? That sounds about right. Okay. I mean, I know I walked that path, so I think I guess that's it. Is the legacy is do what you like that I did, do completely different everything else you didn't like, and it's gonna be, and you got my blessing. Pick and choose what you liked about my life or what you think you knew about my life, and go forward with it. So that's what I'm
Yes. Well, thanks again, you two, for appearing on my show this evening to talk about this. I think it was a really great discussion that we all had about this conversation. It was a really nice time to talk about this discussion. This is my very first post Father's Day special, so I feel like you guys did a great job with sharing your experience with the listeners and lessons that you've learned along the way. You guys have taught me a lot in the process. I mean, I'm only 23, but like I said, I definitely like I said, I definitely learn a lot from you guys. Having this discussion within the past hour. But before I let you guys go, do you have anything else to share? Any last minute thoughts about what we discussed? Just briefly.
saying. I just want to say thank you. I mean, I think one of the things, just what do we like most about Father's Day? It's hard to say because it's always nice, but just a couple days later to celebrate it this way, this is pretty special. So I thank you for that.
Yep, and again, me too. I'd just like to say thanks. And I think this is just the whole thing. I think it's just been a wonderful conversation. Thank you, Dave, for all your points and everything. I mean, this has just been an awesome discussion, and I want to say, like it was awesome that we ended on basically like don't let fear run your life. Like just make your choices. Have no regrets, keep moving forward. If anything, as a father, as a parent in general, you want your kids to do better than you did. Like that's really all you want. Like you want them to have more, be more, everything they want to be, shine their light in some way, shape, or form. And I think that's a great ending to a show like this.
Yes. Well, I'm going to let you two go, but I just want to again thank you for taking time out to appear on my show. I'm sure the listeners felt enlightened, informed, and inspired by what you had to share this evening. So thanks again, and I will definitely keep in touch with you guys.
Take care, Nelson. Thanks a lot, Keith.
Yes.
Take care. Thanks.
You too. Okay, that wraps up another edition of the Beauty in Us Radio right here on Awesome God Radio. I hope you guys enjoyed the show, and I hope you guys learned a lot from this very first post Father's Day special. So next week on Tuesday, June 28th, 2022, from 6 to 7 p.m., we are going to have Maryland State Delegate Regina Boyce here with us to talk about her work in the Maryland General Assembly representing her district in Baltimore City. So make an appointment to meet me back here next week on Tuesday, June 28th, 2022 at 6 p.m. as we sit down with her and talk about the work that she does for the city of Baltimore in the Maryland General Assembly. Again, her name is Regina Boyce, Maryland State Delegate Regina Boyce. I'm glad you all had an opportunity to sit in for this very, very great show, to listen to some great content and to hear from some great men who are doing great things and who are striving for the best and who are leading by example. So again, I think today is the first day of summer. So I just encourage you guys to stay hydrated, enjoy this warm weather, travel, spend time with your family, just enjoy the summer months. I hope you guys I hope you guys have a great evening. I appreciate all of you who tune in each and every week to listen to my show and to hear from all of the phenomenal guests. I will definitely keep you guys posted about my journey. Me working with my fellow graduate classmates and the other graduate students from UMBC and my classmates for this master's program, and also with my professors in this master's program. I am looking forward to it. I I will keep you guys posted on my master's program. That will be beginning very soon. I'm still in touch with all of the graduate students and my professors, and I can't wait for this journey as well. I've gotten over so many hurdles and I've accomplished so much, and I've been able to grow in many aspects of my life. So again, I love you guys and I appreciate you guys for tuning in each and every week. I don't take it for granted. Again, you can like, subscribe, and follow Awesome God Radio on all the social media platforms. You can like, subscribe, and follow my work at Nelson E. Brown on Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch, and all of the other social media sites. And you can also follow me on Facebook and on LinkedIn at Nelson Brown. So again, we have some great content, we have some great shows, and I encourage you all to sit back and listen to those during your spare time. Again, this is the Beauty in Us Radio right here on Awesome God Radio. I'm your host, Nelson E. Brown, and I will see you all next week.